Hi everyone, I'm Ale, developer advocate at Testkube, and I am here today with Testkube's product lead, Bruno, to introduce you to Testkube Cloud, which is now officially out of beta and available to the general public. If you're new here, don't worry. In this video, we'll cover everything about Testkube, starting from the current state and challenges of testing in Kubernetes, how we're solving these problems with Testkube, an overview of our most important features, and a Testkube demo to show you how to get started, how to configure your environment, and how to start testing. So without further ado, why don't we get started? I'll hand it to you, Bruno.
Awesome. Thank you, Ale. So before we go deep into Testkube Cloud, let's talk a bit about what are the current state of testing in Kubernetes. What our product does is really try to solve that problem. And right at this stage, the cloud-native applications are not very easy to test, and CI/CD systems were not made to test in Kubernetes. So we see a lot of people with testing there that do unit testing, but when it comes to integrating it with their Kubernetes clusters, the integration there simply is not there or not working correctly. And Kubernetes doesn't make it very easy for you to test it correctly, right? Kubernetes, as we all know, it's a complex thing, right? It's not a very easy to manage thing. And there are pain points to different stakeholders in your company. As we all know, applications don't develop by themselves. Like there's different people with different roles. So we have like the testers, we have the developers, and you have DevOps people, like infra people, and each one does their role when it comes to getting a product out. So you are developing the code, other people test it, other people automate it, and there's like many people involved. All of them have a stake in testing. So the developers want to know about if the tests pass, when there are bugs, and can they fix it? The testers want to make sure that everything is up to code, they can deliver on their SLAs, and everything is all right. And DevOps people also want to make sure everything is like as a good flow, is automated, and nothing is blocked by automation. So when it comes to the pain points of testers and developers, there's always a challenge with managing different testing tools. Everybody likes to use their own tools. There are tools that is for testing the backend side, tools for testing the front end, tools for load testing, and there's like a lot of them, right? And you have to choose which ones do you want to use, and you have to choose also how we are going to automate them, basically. So, and it's always different. There's no right way to do it. Let's say each company does it a bit different. So there's no silver bullet here. So yeah, it's like every problem is different. So all the solutions look very different. Another issue is also centralized reporting, because all of these tools work by themselves. You cannot really see a place where you have like the results of all the tests and all the things of the applications. If you use a tool for backend testing, a tool for front end, they usually don't combine very well. Another pain point is retrieving test artifacts like JUnit reports or video reports. If you have you are testing EY, for example, when using Cypress, retrieving those artifacts and managing that test results artifact, it's a pain. And the other thing is like scheduling and triggering. It's when you have many environments in Kubernetes and you want to trigger tests based on certain conditions. Well, if you have like just one cluster, might be easy. If you have many, then it becomes a pain, and managing how your code goes through each environment or stage simply like becomes very complex to manage. Another pain point is setting these up. So Kubernetes is not simple, and also using CI/CD to automate the deployment and testing Kubernetes is less simple. And when you try and do not simple things get really complex. The other thing is also security. If you start exposing components on your Kubernetes in order to test it, you are also exposing vulnerabilities. But if you don't expose them, well, it's harder to test because you don't have access to the things that you want to test. So you have to have authentication layers, and sometimes that's like just a hassle to manage. So with all of these different variables, your CI/CD then becomes like very complex to manage, and then when you want to make changes, it becomes a bottleneck. That if you want to optimize things, it just like becomes difficult. So we are here for the rescue, and no, we want you to break free of your CI/CD limitations and start testing in Kubernetes, which is something that not all companies do. A lot of people have tests in their CI/CD, so they do unit tests because they are very easy to set up and just a few lines of code, and they can run a few tests to test their classes. But then they don't test the whole thing. So they don't test the environment, all the applications are set up, all they are connected. So really start testing Kubernetes is like a whole different game and allows it to really be more reliable. So Testkube here comes to the rescue in a way that allows you really to orchestrate and execute your tests in Kubernetes. So it's made for testers, developers, SREs, like anyone that has a vested interest in knowing the state of their applications, if they are working fine, and if they can be delivered to your customers. So do we do it? So we take any existing testing tool that you use, so you don't have to learn a new library or a new system in order to create the tests or to change your existing tests. You just import your tests to Testkube, and Testkube runs them and orchestrates them for you. And then CI/CD system. So if you use Jenkins, GitHub Actions, GitLab, Argo CD, Flux, anything, you can use it then to trigger or to synchronize with Testkube when it comes to that orchestration. And so even though it connects to all of these components, the really important part is because the tests live in Testkube, you don't have to make very complex CI/CD systems. Your CI/CD system becomes very lightweight because you are removing that testing aspect out of it. So you are decoupling the orchestration and execution from your CI/CD into Testkube. So it's like you have very lean pipelines. And then because you are uploading all of your tests into the same system to Testkube, regardless of testing tool or test type, for example, even if it's load testing, backend testing, front end, anything, smoke test, you have a centralized view of everything, regardless of what type it is. So you can quickly open a dashboard and you see everything, which is like really neat. So it allows you to also detect test failures sooner, right? Because if you have CI/CD pipelines with multiple different steps and systems, it becomes harder to use it, especially for non-technical people. Because if you're not technical, you cannot really ask them to go through your CI/CD pipeline and check like the steps and the logs or do like scripts, right? It's not not everyone in the organization has that same knowledge. So here it's very easy for anyone to see what's going on. Because it's Kubernetes native, Testkube really uses all the Kubernetes constructs to execute the tests. So underneath, the way Testkube defines the test is the CRDs. You can use these CRDs to store them, for example, in Git, and then deploy them to different clusters. So everything has a state, and then really when you define the test become part of the state of your cluster. And everything is flexible and scalable. So if your cluster permits it and you want to scale 1 million tests, you can really do that because it's using Kubernetes jobs underneath to schedule everything. So it's really lightweight in that sense. Oh yeah, and then so here it's an example on how a CI/CD can look like when you are doing different types of tests and you are testing an application. So on the left side, it's like a normal CI/CD system, right? You build, you deploy to an environment. Before you deploy to an environment, you might have like different like linting tests or like unit tests or other type of tests, and then you deploy to an environment. And then you want to run several tests against those environments. Something that happens a lot is like your CI/CD system does not have access to that Kubernetes cluster because for security reasons. So that's also a hassle. How do you solve that? Do you authenticate your CI/CD system? And so that's like also adds a layer of complexity. And so on the right side, what Testkube does is it runs a test from inside the cluster. So you don't have to expose your applications. So in that way, they are way more secure. And as you see, like instead of adding the tests to your CI/CD pipeline. So you have extra steps and extra scripts and boilerplate. Here on the right side, you see that Testkube can really just trigger your tests, and because it talks to the Testkube API, and then Testkube can really orchestrate and execute everything for you. So yeah, let me show you. Let's do a demo. So here is Testkube Cloud. You can just go to cloud.testkube.io, and then you can use your GitHub account to authenticate. So you can click continue. And because I already logged in before, you don't see a screen here. That's a lot like us if you want to give permissions, but you'll see this screen once you do. So this is already an existing organization. I'm just going to create one from scratch. So let's do my org demo. So once you log in into Testkube Cloud, you'll see an empty organization that where you can then add the environment. And the environment it's a space where you want to run your applications and test them. So it can be a namespace or a cluster. You decide how do you separate your different environments. So in this case, I'm going to create my first environment. So let's say I'm going to give it a name. The name will be my, let's say, staging. Yeah. So I'm going to click create, and then you have to deploy the Testkube API to your namespace on a cluster. So here on my cluster, I have a Minikube set up. Okay, so I'm going to copy this command here. I'm going to paste it on my terminal. And what it's going to do is just do a Helm deployment to a namespace here. So I'm going to press enter. And now it's deploying. So it should take like 2 or 3 minutes to fully deploy. Meanwhile, let's go over perhaps the other features on the cloud. So in order to authenticate and to secure your systems, you can create API tokens. So it's a way where you can connect to an environment without giving them access. So for example, let's say you want to allow a person to run tests, and you want to have a token that's can revoke. So let's say I have my API token one, and then you can select an expiry date, or you can also give it like a list of environments where you can give it permission to access. So in this case, I'm just going to put it as an admin token, which has access to everything. And then you can create this token. So this token can be used on your CLI to do on your requests, HTTP requests, or if you are integrating it in your CI/CD system to make calls to Testkube, you can use this in order to authenticate. So underneath here. Great. So it seems like we deployed Testkube. Let's go to the Testkube namespace and check it out. So I'm gonna get all. Again, so here's the API server. Okay, seems like the pod is ready and my environment is up now. So you see here, now it's green. So let's add our first test. So right now here on the UI, this UI is connected to my local cluster, which is my environment here. You can have as many as you want to, and organizations as well. We'll go into that in a second. So let's write our first test. So here, let's do a load test using Key6. So I have here my Key6 test for the demo, and then you are going to select which is the test type. So here we are telling Testkube which type of test can you run. So I'm going to here create Key6, and then you can give it a GitHub repo where to fetch the test files from, or a specific file. In this case, I'm just going to use a file to make it easier. I'm just going to upload this test here that I written before. So it's just a simple JavaScript test that tests if the status code is equal to 200. So let's upload this and run it. So here, test random. So this test fails half of the time. So it has a random generator here, and then it's so you can see like the green and red graph. So let's run it now. Awesome. So as you can see, nothings are running in my cluster. You can even do get now. You see here the jobs being scheduled, and as soon as they have like enough space in the cluster, they will get executed. So basically, what Testkube is doing is just orchestrating everything under the hood. Get pods. So here they are. And then something that Testkube does is also the cleanup. So during the execution of your test in Kubernetes, there are like things that might get created in the middle, but Testkube makes sure like nothing is left over. So here are all of our tests just finished. Here are the logs, as you can see. So we Testkube fetches all the logs that you used for to execute that test here. You can use the UI, you can come here. You can, for example, add variables. Let's say that your test was testing against a database. You can say my database URL, and then it could be like Mongo something, and then you can save it. And then, of course, your test will have this variable mounted. And if it's like a secret, you can also do the same thing. So it will be database password, and then you put everything here, and then save it, and then your test also has now access to those configurations. And so yes, you can see here all the status here. You also have test suites, so you can have group different tests as well. What else? Let me check. So you can put this test to be scheduled and to run like every few minutes. All right, so let me show user management. So user management, you can because our org can have as many members as you want to. Let me add Ale. So Ale Canberra at kubeshop.io. So now I can come here to my environment and I can go to members. And I can add you. So here on this screen, I can define what is the level of access you can have to this environment. I can define if you have only read access, so you can only read the tests. I can define if you can run tests and read, of course, and then write, which is like you can add new tests, you can edit the ones that are in place, and admin, which means that you can change the roles of other people, invite new people, you can have full access to this place. So yes, that's basically the whole walkthrough. How you can test inside your Kubernetes cluster in a way that it's secure, in a way that you can see all the tests, if they are running, if they are passing, and gives you full control on how you test your applications.
Awesome. So we've seen how Testkube helps us break free of our CI/CD limitations. It's compatible with any testing or CI/CD tool that you already use. It gives us a centralized look for all our tests, easy access to our test output files. It lets you set test triggers, test suites. It is also extremely friendly and accessible, even to those that aren't familiar with the ins and outs of Kubernetes. And what does it mean for Testkube to be in the cloud? Well, it means that you can manage multiple environments and organizations, generate your API tokens, add members to your orgs and environments, and grant them different levels of permissions and authorization, right? So that was awesome. Thank you, Bruno. So tell us, how do we get started with Testkube today? Where do we have to go, and how do we get in touch with you?
Awesome. Yeah, of course. So you can go to cloud.testkube.io to try it out. Go to website testkube.io as well. So you can, we have Testkube has two flavors. You can use Testkube on the cloud, or can fully deploy it. The difference between open source and cloud is that on the cloud you have organizations and user management, which on the open source you don't. but it's fully free on the cloud, so you can go there and use it. And you can reach out to us on Discord. We are pretty much there every time. Our team is fully remote and across like basically the whole globe. So I'm sure like everybody, somebody will be awakened, and they'll probably be there to answer your questions. Or if you want like to help getting started, just feel free to schedule a call with me. I'm open anytime.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.
Bye
Bye.
bye.